My designation within the Keth-Voral Biological Reclamation Program was Senior Intake Assessor, 3rd tier. My job was to document what came in, confirm it matched the intake manifest, and assign a processing queue. I am filing this report because I am the only member of the Keth-Voral facility staff whose current location is known. The subject arrived on intake day 41 of the program's 4th operational cycle. The manifest listed her as a non-combatant human female, age 31 standard years, logistics contractor designation VOS, E, formerly attached to a decommissioned freight brokerage operating out of the Ossian-Drev transit corridor. She had been detained at the Keth-Voral perimeter checkpoint, under the program's standard acquisition parameters. A human within the sector's neutral buffer zone, no military registration, no class designation on file, the kind the directors preferred. They called it a clean sample. She sat in the intake chair and looked at the processing room the way a maintenance worker looks at a duct junction she has already mentally mapped, not evaluating it, having evaluated it. Her hands were loose on the armrests. She did not strain against the restraints. She had not strained since checkpoint 3. I noted this in the intake log as, subject shows low stress response. Consistent with non-combatant profile, I was wrong about what I was looking at. The Keth-Voral suppression compound, I will use the program's own terminology since I have no other, was designed to isolate and chemically attenuate what the program directors called the human contextual processing layer. Their research suggested that the human species was uniquely dangerous, not because of raw physical capacity, which was significant, but not extraordinary, but because of a second-order cognitive function, the constant, automatic threat modeling, the ability to walk into a room and within seconds know every exit, every weight-bearing object, every person's probable reach. They called it over-calibrated environmental awareness. The Veth-Cal xenobiology team that first documented it called it something less clinical. They called it the thing that should not have survived millions of years of civilization, and yet clearly had. The compound was designed to suppress it, quiet the calculation, leave the body, remove the map reader from behind the eyes. Director Drev San presented the initial results to the oversight board on cycle day 12. The compound worked. Test subjects, earlier acquisitions, 2 of them military, 3 non-combatant, showed a 34% reduction in contextual response time. They sat in the processing room and looked at walls instead of exits. They became manageable. I wrote this in my log. I wrote it in good faith. Subject Voss received her first compound administration on intake day 41, at the 14th standard hour. I was present. She did not react to the injection beyond a slight, slow blink. The attending technician noted her pupillary response was slower than baseline and flagged it as confirmation of efficacy. Director Drevson reviewed the flag remotely and approved progression to the reclamation block. I walked her to the reclamation block myself, standard procedure for non-combatant designated subjects. The directors used lower-tier staff for that transit to demonstrate the compound's effectiveness to the oversight board. A suppressed subject walked quietly with a single unarmed functionary. It was meant to be persuasive. She walked quietly. I did not look at her face during the transit. I was reviewing my next intake log entry on my handheld. At the end of the corridor, she said, quietly and without inflection, "Two are dummies. The third's feed delay is about 8 seconds. I wrote this down. I did not know what to do with it, so I filed it under anomalous vocalization and moved on. The reclamation block held 14 subjects across the program's 4 cycles. Each was assigned a monitored compartment, a feeding protocol, and a twice-daily compound administration. The block was designed by the Drevson board specifically to be inescapable for a suppressed subject. The doors were keyed to carapace print only. No human hand structure would register. The ventilation conduits ran at a diameter the program's xenobiologists had calculated no adult human could transit. The outer corridor was patrolled by 2 contractor guards from the Keth-Voral security detail, shift rotations every 6 hours. The program had been running for 11 weeks without incident. On cycle day 43, 2 standard days after subject Voss's intake, at the reclamation block at the opening of the morning administration window, and found the block empty. The 14 subjects were absent. The contractor guards were present. Both of them, seated on the floor of the outer corridor, with their hands secured behind them, using strips of their own gear webbing, still conscious, neither physically harmed in any way that required medical notation. The door keypads had been bypassed. I say bypassed. The correct term, per the technical assessment filed afterward, is that someone had opened the maintenance panel behind the second keypad, identified the two wires that carried the carapace print signal, rather than the power supply, and bridged them with a piece of conductive foil from a standard-issue nutrition wrapper, which triggered a default open failsafe that the installation's original contractors had included, and that the Drev-San board had not known existed. I know this because I read the technical assessment. "22nd hour of intake day 41, 10 hours after her first compound administration. The xenobiology team's diameter calculation had been correct. No adult human could transit them. What the calculation had not accounted for was a human who understood that the conduit didn't need to be transited if the ceiling access panel above conduit junction 7 was simply unscrewed from the inside, using the metal clip from a standard intake assessment stylus, which I had been carrying during the transit to the reclamation block, and which was no longer in my upper left pocket when I checked. She had taken it while I was reading my log. I do not know how the other 13 subjects exited the installation. The outer gate log shows a single exit event at the third standard hour of cycle day 43. One departure recorded. I have no explanation for the other 13. I have stopped trying to find one. Director Drev-San convened an emergency board review on cycle day 43 at the 9th hour. I attended as a record keeper. The director's position, which I will summarize accurately and without editorial, was that the program's compound had functioned as designed. The subjects had shown marked reduction in contextual response metrics across all measured parameters, and that the escape event was therefore attributable to a facility security failure, not a compound efficacy failure. I recorded this position in the minutes. I also recorded, because it was my job to record what I observed, that Director Drev-San's secondary lens pair, the small lateral eyes that the Drevson subspecies cannot consciously control, had been tracking the room's exits continuously since he sat down. He had reviewed the compound's efficacy numbers before the meeting. He knew what the compound was supposed to do. He was checking the exits anyway. I understood then what I had written down on intake day 41 and not known what to do with. The compound had suppressed 34% of Subject Voss's contextual processing capacity. The program directors had celebrated this as a success. What they had not done, what, as far as I can determine, no one in the program had done, was ask what 34% of that capacity meant in raw terms. What the remainder looked like, running unencumbered, with nothing left in the cognitive stack that wasn't the map reading. I filed my incident report on cycle day 44. The final notation reads as follows. Keth-Voral Biological Reclamation Program, Cycle 4 Incident Summary, Assessor Notation. The program succeeded in removing the part of the subject that decides not to act. The facility did not survive the part that remained. I have recommended in an attached addendum that the program be closed. I do not expect the board to agree with me. I expect them to agree with me by cycle day 50.